Catus Maximus here, this time with a review of what I believe to be the original Roto-Head Ratchet. This still has the patent number on it, and doing a little research I didn't realize that SK in 1961 was actually who was issued the patent for Roto-Head ratchets. They were bought out and changed to the SK Wayne name in 1964, 1965, and that continued for a few years. I believe SK now is part of the Shopback group. Also, on note, when they were bought, electrolyte tools are also related to SK. The Wayne company, I believe, also bought out Electrolyte at the same time. So one, I didn't realize that these Roto-Head ratchets had existed for more than half a century. This is just a standard SK head from like the traditional SK ratchets, but it is a long handle, as we can see. So it's one way of getting a long handle SK. And it's also interesting that it took a while, many decades, for Roto-Head ratchets to really become popularized, but I didn't really know who really invented them, and it turns out it was SK. So this is kind of a neat piece of tool history. I've never seen one before, so they didn't sell very many of them, or when people do see these SK Roto-Heads, they really hold on to them because they just don't show up very often. This one, as we can see, really nice knurling. I really like heavy knurling on ratchet handles. Just gives you a nice, good, solid grip. And using the traditional split beam design, they have a little washer in here so you can tighten the fastener down nice and tight, and it doesn't end up crushing. A little bit of inconsistency here where you can see like the forged nub on the head isn't quite the same on either side, but you know, that's not a big deal. And of course, it's a Roto-Head ratchet, so it offers you the advantages over traditional flex heads. Is the position of rotation, or the hinge point, is in line with the drive point, so you can hold on to them and push them onto a fastener on odd angles, and since you're pushing in line, you can hold them onto the fastener, where on traditional flex heads, the head wants to, flop back and forth. The disadvantage is, of course, Roto-Head ratchets have very wide heads, and so they end up having fitment issues in many situations. But they still are nice. They're also still nice in many situations, because once you get something loose, you can turn it, and it just ends up becoming a spinner handle or a quick ratcheting spinner handle. Really do like it. And as we can see in here, there's just a couple of thin washers is what they're using essentially for springs as preload. So anyway, we'll open this up, pull this socket off. Reasonable quality detent. Traditional SK, we just have these two little wings here, which are always real special to get apart here. We'll use these German-made Vigor mini pliers, which are actually something just about perfect to get these tiny little tabs on this spring out. There we go. Got our little spring and our traditional SK single pawl design. I think it's only like a 40 tooth. Never was super fond of the SK single pawl designs, but they've relatively proven themselves over the years. A little chip on that tooth. Kind of interesting that they have a little flattened area there. That's so these other two teeth can engage. I guess the big difference on these SK ones is this pawl is really wide, which changes the angle. Makes it a little bit more, when you're putting force on it, makes the forces go a little bit more downwards into the teeth, and that may explain actually why, even though they're single pawl, SK ratchets tend to be pretty reliable. Roundhead ratchets, I've run into many that slip, but it is true, most of the SKs I've run into don't slip. Even though I am still much more fond of twin pawl designs, like Protos and Williams and stuff. A lot of people love the SKs and have actually, not had many issues with them. And then there's our little lever right there. It is staked, so you can't actually rebuild or take apart, fully take apart the ratchet because of the way the reversing lever is staked. Now, the reason other ratchets use smaller pawls is we can see the reversing knob is offset On many, the hole is right down the middle of the ratchet, and there's like a little hole, there's a cross hole in this pin with a little spring detent. That's what's actually causing the reversing or the the preload on the pawl. Many make it more compact and put the hole right down through the center. And when you do that, you can't have as large of a nub or as wide of a pawl. And so that is actually one of the differences of the SK design. I'll just lube this up and put it back together. Also, SKs tend to have less trouble with self-reversing, and we can see because the reversing knob actually sits in this little recess in there, so it's not actually, there's less rubbing happening on the body of the ratchet. Quick tip, since it's a battle to actually hold this spring tight, put the switch in the middle so it holds the pawl in a recess portion method. That way you can just pop it in there and easily get the clip on. So anyway, there's my little review and teardown of this really nice condition OG 1960s SK Roto-Head ratchet, long handle Roto-Head ratchet. And actually lubing these up really pretty smooth, reasonably low back drag, really easy to change direction. And a nice piece of tool history, and just for people, the 2977824 is the patent number for the OG original Roto-Head ratchet. So who knew that? I didn't know that SK was actually the one who invented these types of ratchets. Nor did I know that they had been around for more than 60 years. So if you're really into collecting kind of original or first of their type tools, then when it comes to the Roto-Head ratchet, you may want to look at one of these old SK Wayne, or I guess they were, for the first few years they were just SK, and then they're SK Wayne, and later on in the later 60s, mid to late 60s, and so on. And just think it's a kind of a neat piece of tool history. Anyway, really appreciate everybody who's been watching. See you next time.